Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Wrestling with Connor podcast. I just want to say thank you for tuning in. Like always, I want to keep doing this, so all the support is very, very much appreciated. Today, we're going to be talking about AEW, NXT, Raw, Smackdown, a little bit of ECW, some deathmatch stuff, and then we've got a main topic we're going to be going over towards the end of the episode that I'm very excited to talk about. Also, don't forget, send questions and topics that you want me to go over to Monarchathias at Twitter and Instagram. That's spelled Monnorchathias. Please do that. I want to go over stuff that you guys want to hear. So, without further ado, let's get right into the episode. Welcome once again to the Wrestling with Connor podcast. I am very excited for today's episode. This morning I woke up and I was just excited to get to Sunday, basically. I'm excited to see Revolution, AEW Revolution. I got on my phone and I just kept seeing stuff about Dynamite last night with Shaq. And apparently Onita showed up, or he didn't show up. There was a video promo that he sent out, since he's the creator of the Exploding Barbed Wire Deathmatch or cage match. He sent out a little nod to Moxley and Kenny Omega, basically, I believe, saying, I hope you're ready for this type of match. That's always cool. Onita's great. Onita, Muta, Hayabusa. I love all those guys from Japan. So anything when it comes to old school OG, New Japan, or All Japan, FMW guys, that stuff's really cool to me. And since I saw all that, I wanted to see if there were any Onita matches on WWE Network. And it turns out there is one. It's Tommy Dreamer and Sandman, mystery opponent versus the Dudley Boys. I'm assuming they put mystery opponent because they either don't want to pay Onita as much as they could or should. I don't know how that stuff works, but sometimes they will show who the mystery opponent is if there's an angle that there's a mystery opponent in the little descriptions. So it's a little confusing how they bill those in the descriptions on the network, but it's Dreamer, Sandman, and Onita versus the Dudley Boys. And then Onita comes out and takes this big 2x4 with barbed wire and just starts hitting everybody with it, and then hits Sandman, and then DDT's him, DDT's Dreamer. New Jack comes out. They do the whole thing. New Jack's music's playing the whole fucking time during the Dan match, which is hilarious to me, but that's about the only thing they've got on the network with Onita actually wrestling, other than the episode where ECW goes to Japan and wrestles. They do the joint venture with FMW, and Onita is the founder of FMW, so he is obviously on that episode of Hardcore TV. But yeah, I watched a few episodes of Hardcore TV today. It's nice to go back and watch that, see some prime Rob Van Dam, Taz, Sabu, Dreamer, Sandman, all those guys. It was early 98 that I was watching, and there was a match with Jerry Lynn. He was the dynamic one. Jerry Lynn versus No Gimmicks Needed, Chris Candido. And that was a tremendous match early in Jerry Lynn's career. He had super short hair, clean face. He looked like maybe mid-20s or early mid-20s, but really, really good match. before Jerry Lynn started his feud with RVD and basically made that the greatest feud of, arguably the greatest feud of ECW. But yeah, those hardcore TV days, the blood and guts days, those are just awesome to me. I love old school ECW and Onita, and that's a perfect transition into what else I would like to talk about, which is AEW and the fact that they are putting on a Exploding Barbed Wire Deathmatch. When I saw that Kenny Omega said that there was going to be an Exploding Barbed Wire Deathmatch, I could not wait to see what Jim Cornette was going to say, basically. I am looking forward to it, but at the same time, I'm really not. I love hardcore wrestling, don't get me wrong, but there's a point when it gets a little absurd and just, it's like, okay, come on. Like, the stuff they did in the mid-90s in Japan with All Japan, FMW, and all that stuff with deathmatch wrestling it's cool, because it was like a niche at the time, but now it's been overexposed so much. There's too much, and there's almost a mockery made of it because people have these matches that are nowhere near the caliber of Terry Funk versus Cactus Jack, or Onita versus Cactus Jack, or Onita versus Hayabusa. Like, those matches will never be able to be replicated because nobody in America wants to do it, or nobody really anywhere wants to do that type of thing nowadays. It's dangerous. I mean, you've got literal explosives going off on the side of the ring, whether or not they're rigged to explode like an actual C4 device or not. Shit's just dangerous. You got barbed wire everywhere, especially back then. You can't do it the same way they did it then. So it's going to be interesting to see how they do this. A lot of people bitched about what was it called? The lights out match, or the unsanctioned lights out match that they had last year or a year and a half ago. Everybody bitched about the barbed wire was fake. They weren't bleeding enough. It's like, Jesus, guys, do you want these guys to just literally kill themselves, or do you want them to try to put on a good match with what they've got? Like, I don't think the barbed wire was fake. Like, some people were saying it was like rubber. It's like, I don't know if they did that. That's literally turning wrestling into a Disney film, in my opinion. But on with that. The death match is going to be interesting to see. But yeah, I'm buying Revolution. There's a few angles in AEW right now that I'm actually genuinely excited for. It's probably been the first time in 2021 and the first time in a while that I'm like, okay, I want to buy this pay-per-view. I need to see what's going on here. Which is with the death match with Paul White, aka Big Show, making his debut in AEW, announcing that he would be a announcer and part-time wrestler, which is interesting to hear. But it's promising because he obviously wants to finish his career on his own terms and not because someone says he's too old and he can't do it anymore, because obviously he can. He is in tremendous shape. And he got in really good shape the past 5 years. Paul White. And then we've got Shaq. Shaq is wrestling in AEW. I tell people this sometimes that aren't into wrestling, and they're like Shaq, like the basketball player Shaq. It's like, yeah, that guy. This guy is wrestling, and he went crazy last night. People are probably going to disagree with me, but I enjoyed the Shaq, Jade Cargill, Cody Rhodes, Red Velvet match. I think that was a good match. You can't expect much from it. First of all, you've got Cody Rhodes and Red Velvet. I don't know much about Red Velvet, but you know Cody Rhodes. Cody Rhodes is a very experienced wrestler. His dad's Dusty Rhodes. His brother is Dustin Rhodes, or Gold Dust. They're a wrestling family. You can't really deny that he's a good wrestler. And then you've got Jade Cargill, who is a former model, I understand, and she's just now getting into wrestling, but she's got the wrestler's body. She looks like a wrestler. She doesn't look like just some model that's just like, I want to try this. Like, she's in this too. She's a good heel. She works the crowd. She makes sure that her lack of experience is made up for by her ability to be a heel, work the crowd, make them boo her. And she did a good job by doing that. Shaq is trying to be a heel, but who hates Shaq? How can you hate Shaq? Let's just be honest here. Anything he does is either hilarious or it's just like, damn, that dude's how old and he's doing this? Like, and that was one of those situations here where this guy took, first of all, he hit Cody Rhodes with a powerbomb, which I was surprised. I was surprised like in WWE, they wouldn't trust him doing anything like that, but they have this leeway in AEW where they trust people. They've got people teaching them, obviously, how to do stuff, and they trusted him enough to hit the powerbomb on Cody Rhodes. Easy enough move. And then Cody, I can't believe this. Cody runs across the ring with Shaq on the outside trying to get a tag and cross bodies over the ropes onto Shaq while there's two tables on the outside, and they take a table bump, a double table bump on the outside. And I was for sure Shaq broke his fucking back because it was, a 7-foot guy who weighs easily 300 pounds just falling back first from the apron onto the floor. That's crazy. And he did it good. It looked great. I was very impressed with the match. It looked like more of a wrestling match than a entertainment angle that, say, like WWE would do. I hate comparing it to WWE all the time, but it's hard not to now that you've got two wrestling shows that are easily comparable when you've got guys like Shaq who have wrestled in WWE and now he's wrestled in AEW. It's hard not to compare that stuff, but I think the match was good. I think Shaq did a good job. He definitely did better than I thought he would. I thought it was going to be a botch fest or just nothing, just them having Shaq do like a choke slam and just winning the match easily, but I think it was great. On from that, we had something really interesting, in my opinion, happen that I don't know if enough people are really talking about. So the match between Jurassic Express, which is Luchasaurus, Jungle Boy, and Marco Stunt, versus FTR and Tully Blanchard. Tully Blanchard coming out of retirement, and I believe his last match was in like 94 or something. Coming out of retirement, he is FTR's manager, former Horseman. They may use the once a Horseman, forever a Horseman phrase. It's quite possible, but in this instance, I think there's going to be a new Four Horsemen. Tully Blanchard hit Marco Stunt with a vintage springboard suplex off of the ropes, which is some vintage Tully stuff. And it was just a fun match. They didn't have to do too much. And with Marco Stunt being as small as he is, that gave Tully the opportunity to actually look good. He wasn't lifting some 250-pound, 300-pound guy to do a move. It was, like I said, it looked good. I liked it. But at the end of the match, with aid of a masked, hooded man, FTR wins. FTR and Tully Blanchard wins, and he takes the mask and the hood off, and it is Shawn Spears, the other associate of Tully Blanchard. Tully Blanchard is also his manager, and I thought this was going to happen a long time ago. We've got FTR and Shawn Spears now, I'm assuming, almost forming something here between the three of them. And not only that, we had J.J. Dillon out there, another former Horseman, and they're all out there as basically the new Horsemen. And then all of a sudden, Arn Anderson comes out, just walks out of the curtain to the ramp and holds up the four fingers as in a sign like, hey, let's do this. Also, Arn Anderson, being a former Four Horseman, he is Cody Rhodes' manager. If we see Cody Rhodes turn heel after this little angle he does with Shaq, we could very well see a new Four Horsemen with Cody Rhodes, Shawn Spears, and FTR. And if we see that, I think that we could see a incredible resurgence of just wrestling back in wrestling, you could say, because those four guys can do it. They are serious about what they do, and I think a new Four Horsemen is something that that wrestling needs right now. Some OG grounded guys that are tough and resemble the original Four Horsemen, which is Ric Flair, Arn Anderson, Tully Blanchard, and Ole Anderson, and obviously J.J. Dillon. So you could say Barry Windham in there as well. I think that a new Four Horsemen would be amazing. That's something I'm super excited about. I hope that happens, because all the pieces are falling together, and it could be a very historic thing in wrestling, I think. Yeah. Hey everybody, I just wanted to take a quick second to shout out Anchor. Without Anchor, I would not be making this podcast. It is free, and I'm making this straight from my phone. It's super easy. You can edit it. You can split sound. Say you want to split up one segment into two, you can go ahead and do that. You can add sound to one, and the other doesn't need it. Whatever you want, basically. You can send it to Apple, Spotify, Google, and many, many other platforms. You can make money off of it without any minimum listenership. You can go just right in and start your own podcast. It's super easy. It's free, and basically everything that you need in one place. Download the free Anchor app or go to anchor.fm to get started. Let's get back to the podcast. All right, let's get into NXT. So, Undisputed Era is officially over. I guess I'm starting at the end of the episode here, but Adam Cole said he was going to wait to explain why he injured Kyle O'Reilly on the steel steps last week. We did not go over that episode. I've been lacking on watching NXT lately. It's just not that it's bad at all, because it's a good show. I definitely will. I end up watching them a week later on the network or a day later, but it's just not keeping my attention like AEW is, or even like Smackdown. Smackdown and AEW are probably keeping my attention the most. But Undisputed Era is, I assume, officially done, unless they are doing some sort of rib, like DX rib, where they act like they're all upset with each other, and then they come back and just fucking destroy everyone, basically, you could say. But yeah, Adam Cole comes out. He says that he's disgusted with what he did, blah, blah, blah. Roderick Strong comes out and basically says the same thing. He can't believe he did that. And then they have Finn Balor come out, which makes sense, but it's also kind of confusing. He just comes out and disrupts the meeting between Roderick Strong and Adam Cole while they're talking, and they just kind of beat up Finn Balor, and then they end up back in the ring together. So it was just kind of a stall, I guess. I don't know. It was kind of weird, but they're back in the ring together, and then they're crying or whatever because Roderick Strong clotheslined him, and Adam Cole's crying. He's like, "Oh, I'm sorry. I just want things to be back to the same." And then he low blows Roderick Strong. Classic Adam Cole. He never changes. He might as well just go back to suck my dick, Adam Cole, from PWG and ROH and everything like that. Excuse my language, but if you know what I'm talking about, you know what I mean. He's much better as a heel than he is babyface. Much, much better. You notice a trend with that as well. There's guys that they try to make baby faces and they just aren't. They just aren't babyface. Like, they just can't. They're much better as a bad guy than they are as a good guy. And that's Adam Cole for sure. I'm pretty excited to see what comes from this. Probably Adam Cole versus Roderick Strong, and then when Kyle O'Reilly comes back, I'm sure he'll get at Adam Cole. I wonder what Bobby Fish is going to have in with this, because it'll be a bit before he comes back, but I hope that they do fit him into the angle in some way. But yeah, Undisputed Era officially over. On with that, I think Dexter Lumis is going to get a title shot and win. They seem to be pushing him a little bit with Johnny Gargano, and it just seems like they're dragging this angle out for a while. And normally when that happens, they flip the title. I don't know if Johnny's going to go to the main roster. I don't think that's really ever going to happen anytime soon. Kind of with like Tommaso and Finn, Adam Cole, those guys are better in NXT. They'll be utilized better down there. But yeah, I just think they might flip the title real quick onto Dexter for a bit, and then probably have Johnny just win it back. They might have him win it at the next takeover, because apparently there's going to be a takeover between now and WrestleMania that was not announced until just recently. It doesn't even have a name yet, but they might maybe have him pick up the title then, and then take over for WrestleMania. They will have Johnny pick that title back up. Just what I think is going to happen. Like I said, that's NXT doesn't really keep my attention anymore, so those are the only two things that I really have any opinion on. I know, excuse me, I know Lacey Ryan got a title, or not a title shot, but a opportunity to face Io Shirai. That was cool. I forget what her new name is in NXT, but they did give her a new name. But yeah, NXT is just kind of for me right now. I like what they're doing with Karrion Kross, but I would really like him to just go to the main roster, because he seems bigger than NXT just as a wrestler and a character. So I'd like to see that. But yeah. So like I said with NXT not keeping my attention, it is not quite the same with Raw and SmackDown. It's more similar with Raw. I don't watch Raw very often. I'll watch Raw Talk or Talking Smack with SmackDown, but especially with this past week, the Talking Smack episode was much better than Raw Talk. Not that that really matters, but there's just more, I feel like, more interesting storylines going on SmackDown with Seth Rollins coming back, and his feud with Cesaro starting up. Cesaro's got this new found, not energy, but it's almost like he's found himself as a wrestler, and that's awesome because Cesaro's a fucking beast. He's basically the strongest wrestler in the business, as far as size-wise. He's not a very, beefy guy. He's cut, he's lean, but he is strong as hell. He's damn strong. That's a really cool rivalry that I'm looking forward to. We've got Daniel Bryan that cut a awesome promo, A+ promo. It reminded me of when Miz cut a promo on Daniel Bryan. What was it, 2 years ago or so? When he called him a coward and Daniel Bryan walked off. Daniel Bryan talked about how he won the Elimination Chamber for the 3rd time. He then, immediately after that match, has to face Roman Reigns for the title, because the winner of the Elimination Chamber had that stipulation on top of it. So immediately after that, Roman beats Daniel Bryan pretty quick. Then Edge comes in and spears Roman, signaling that he picks Roman at WrestleMania. Edge won the Royal Rumble, and he then gets the opportunity to pick whether the Universal Champion, which is Roman Reigns, or the WWE Champion, which was Drew McIntyre, but it is now Bobby Lashley, which we'll get into that here in a second. But Daniel Bryan went in to talk about how he felt like that was his ultimate failure, and he wants to get that title shot, a real title shot against Roman Reigns. So Paul Heyman gave him that opportunity. Daniel Bryan said, let's make it a cage match. So it's Daniel Bryan versus Jey Uso in a cage match to get an opportunity to face Roman Reigns at Fastlane. So, like I said, if Daniel Bryan wins the match, he faces Roman Reigns at Fastlane, and if he loses to Jey Uso, he has to announce that Roman is his tribal chief and he is the best wrestler in the world and ever been in the ring with, which is dumb. I like that whole thing, but them having to proclaim that he's their tribal chief is a little weird. But Daniel Bryan ends his promo by saying he is going to show everybody that he was the best damn wrestler in the world before CM Punk even said it. I liked that he mentioned CM Punk and just that the best damn wrestler in the world. Daniel Bryan seems to have that fire. I think it's his last run as a full-time wrestler, so he wants to make the most of it, and it's showing. I'm excited to see if they give him a title before he retires or not. But I think there's going to be some debauchery that happens between Roman and Daniel Bryan, which results in Daniel Bryan being added to the Edge Roman Reigns match at WrestleMania, making it a triple threat, and not the first time Daniel Bryan has been in that situation. So I would be very excited if that happens. Daniel Bryan, Edge, and Roman Reigns in the main event at WrestleMania for the Universal title. That would be very exciting, no matter the outcome, which I think would just be Edge. I think Edge would probably win, pinning Daniel Bryan because something happens to Roman, keeping Roman looking strong, and having him come back saying blah blah blah. You didn't actually beat me. You didn't pin me. You did. So then he gets his title back. Classic, just classic WWE shit. But nonetheless, I'm excited for it. Talking Smack is probably my favorite show that WWE does outside of a wrestling show, like a talk show, you could say. Then we get into Raw talk, which it was alright, but it was just more silly rather than talking about wrestling with R-Truth. R-Truth's hilarious, but it was just silly. On Raw, Bobby Lashley won the WWE Championship. Finally, for the first time in his career, he is a WWE champion. He, I believe, debuted in 2005 or 2006. And then really came into prominence 2007 and 2008, and then he left to TNA and went off in TNA. He won the TNA title, also with the help of MVP, by the way. A lot of people don't know that. But his TNA stuff is awesome. He was really good. He's also an MMA fighter. I mean, he fought in Bellator during those times, kind of like how Jake Hager does it with AEW. But yeah, finally a champion. 10 out of 10. That's all I gotta say about that. I've been a fan of his ever since he broke the Master Lock. I remember watching that on TV. Chris Masters had the Master Lock Challenge, which is just a full Nelson, but he would have somebody sit down in a chair and he would put the Master Lock on him, and then they had, I don't know, 30 seconds or a minute to get out of the Master Lock, or else they lost, or whatever the hell it was. Well, he had Bobby Lashley come out, and Bobby Lashley was the first one to break the Master Lock, and I was a kid, and I was like, yes, Bobby Lashley is the fucking man. So, like I said, Bobby Lashley I've been a big fan of Bobby Lashley, and he is very deserving of that strap. But yeah, that was about all that was good about Raw and Raw talk. I mean, you got Bad Bunny is trying to get the 24/7 title or something, or he is the 24/7 champion, and Damian Priest is like his buddy on. It's just, Raw is kind of weird right now in my opinion, but like I said, SmackDown keeps my interest more, and Raw and NXT are kind of in the same category. Just, they're kind of there. I'll watch whenever I get a chance. But yeah, that's kind of it for weekly television. We went over AEW, a little bit of ECW and what it has to do with Onita, and how AEW is doing that death match, the Exploding Barbed Wire Deathmatch. By the way, the barbed wire replaces the ropes. Normally, I think they're gonna just wrap the ropes in some barbed wire and call it a day. You'll see in my thumbnail that I've got for this podcast what an Exploding Barbed Wire Deathmatch looks like. So just pay attention to that, and then if you see what AEW does, I assure you it will look vastly different. But without further ado, I would like to get into the main topic. And before I do that, I want to shout out Jordan, who suggested the topic, which is, name one wrestler that I would like to bring back, who I would like to see them wrestle, and why. Alright, I'm going to cheat a little bit on this. like I said, the topic is one wrestler that I would like to bring back, one wrestler that has passed away. But I picked three, and in parentheses four, because technically there's four here. I'm going to start with three, the number three spot. By the way, these are like just my personal picks. They aren't like the all-time like type thing. Like this is what I would pick. So, by the way, shout out to Jordan once again. Number three, we've got Rick Rude. Rick Rude was one of the greatest Intercontinental champions of all time. He was in the Heenan family with Mr. Perfect, Andre the Giant, Haku. He's from Minnesota, which is a very, very prominent state when it comes to legendary wrestlers. You had Ric Flair, the Andersons, Mr. Perfect, X-Pac, Brock Lesnar, Shelton Benjamin. I can keep going. A lot of wrestlers came from Minnesota, and a lot of legendary wrestlers as well. And that goes on to who I would like him to face, which is where I cheated a little bit more. Mr. Perfect, Kurt Hennig. If you don't know who that is, if you've ever heard of Curtis Axel, he is Mr. Perfect's son. Mr. Perfect, in my opinion, is one of the greatest wrestlers of all time, along with Rick Rude. They are both like the greatest sellers ever. They can make the worst wrestler look like one of the best in the business. And that's just because they are one of the best in the business. Like I said, both of them are from Minnesota. Both of them were in the Heenan family. Both of them are arguably two of the greatest Intercontinental champions of all time. And they both never won the heavyweight title in WWF. Rick Rude, you can make an exception for. He won the NWA heavyweight title, WCW heavyweight title, whatever you want to call it. At the time, it was a little confusing. But he won the heavyweight title in WCW, just never in WWF. And they both never wrestled. They always seemed to be side by side, even in WCW. During the NWO days, they never wrestled, which obviously, because Rick Rude, I believe his last match was in 94 or 95. Rick Rude's career ended because, and it's really nobody's fault other than the arena. In Japan, there was a match with Rick Rude and Sting. Sting jumped over the top rope out to the outside with a crossbody onto Rick Rude, and there is like a step, like a ledge that goes down behind Rick Rude, and where Sting landed on him, it broke his back. I think, I don't know what it's called. He broke the C4 and the C5 in his back or something like that. That ended his career. But yeah, if that wouldn't have happened, who knows if Mr. Perfect and Rick Rude would have wrestled again, or ever, I should say. That would have been a really good match, and two guys that were definitely taken before they should have been. They definitely two of the greatest wrestlers of all time, in my opinion. And to my second pick, which is Owen Hart. The Nugget. The Blue Blazer. Owen Hart is pretty important to wrestling. not just to wrestling, but to my love of wrestling. Owen Hart was the embodiment of just a wrestler, and the Brody Lee passing really, and I wasn't alive. Well, I was, but I wasn't old enough to grasp reality when Owen Hart died. But I've definitely watched a lot. I've watched the episode of Raw after he passed. I've watched the pay-per-view where he passed. I've watched many interviews. I've watched The Dark Side of the Ring. I've watched just about everything you can about it. And when Brody Lee passed, it reminded me a lot of that. Not the way, obviously, but Brody Lee being a family man. Everybody loved him. It's a lot the same with Owen Hart. Owen Hart was also one of the greatest wrestlers, one of the greatest performers of all time. He also is a part of the Hart family. His brother's Owen Hart, or his brother's Bret Hart. His brother-in-law is British Bulldog. Their whole family is just prestigious to wrestling. But Owen especially. Owen never got a chance to hold the world title. But he also, along with Rick Rude and Mr. Perfect, held the Intercontinental Championship. He was a very good Intercontinental Champion. He also held the tag team titles with Jeff Jarrett, Yokozuna, British Bulldog, I believe Bret Hart. He tag teamed with Coco Beware in the early 90s. But yeah, Owen Hart is my second pick. And who I would like him to wrestle would be that early 2000s, mid 2000s Kurt Angle. That intense, just the intense wrestler, Team Angle. I think that would be an outstanding match. That would be crazy good. Just to see Owen with his technical ability, and then Kurt being a Olympic gold medalist in wrestling, and those two just going at it. I think that could have gone down as one of the greatest matches of all time. And easily having Kurt Angle being the heel and Owen being the babyface later in his career, that could have been amazing. A very, very good match could have happened right there. And finally, number one is Eddie Guerrero. I think a lot of people would pick this. Eddie was one of my favorites when I was a kid growing up, watching wrestling, watching Smackdown. I remember watching Eddie Guerrero versus RVD on Raw for the Intercontinental Championship in the ladder match. Eddie Guerrero versus Brock Lesnar, Eddie and Kurt, the stuff Eddie did with John Cena before he got to Kurt Angle and Brock. He is just definitely one of mine and one of the greatest wrestlers just to ever step foot into WWE or grace wrestling with his presence. I think if his heart wasn't bad, which a lot of people don't know, he had a bad heart. Kurt Angle talked about this a little bit in the show that he did with Stone Cold, that there'd be nights where him and Eddie would be wrestling and Eddie would just get blown up. And if you don't know what that means that he's just huffing and puffing. He's lost all of his stamina. He doesn't have any more oxygen in the tank, and he's just kind of going through the motions trying to get through the match. But he'd get blown up halfway through, and Kurt said that he would go backstage and get pissed and be like, "What the fuck is wrong with you? Why are you acting like this?" And he would just sit there and apologize. He'd be like, "I'm sorry. I'm just not feeling it tonight," or whatever. And he never apparently told anybody that he had a bad heart. And that's what happened when he passed. He just brushed in his teeth one day and it just gave out on him. So A lot of people don't know that. But I think that if he had if his heart worked the way that it should have, I think if Eddie would have gotten into the late 2000s and faced Edge for a world title, or even now, Eddie, I think, would be, how old would he? I don't know how old Eddie would be now, but nonetheless, I think a current Edge or a 2010s Edge versus Eddie Guerrero would be an amazing match. 5-star match for sure. I would pay big bucks to see that. Eddie Guerrero, just to get back into that, I mean, Eddie Guerrero versus Rey Mysterio with the whole Dominic contract thing. I remember watching that so intently, even though it was such a absurd storyline. I was so into that. I loved Rey Mysterio so much, and then the stuff with Batista was awesome. There was just so much that you could tell was being created, and then it just had to be thrown away. But yeah, Eddie Guerrero, number one for sure. I would love to see him come back if I had the wish to do so. But yeah, you could say that these are my 3 wishes. If I had 3 wishes, I'd bring back Rick Rude, Owen Hart, and Eddie Guerrero. And you throw me a 4th, it'd be Mr. Perfect. Those 4 guys are, and I honestly don't think anybody would argue that those 4 guys are probably in the top 20 or top 15 in the greatest performers in our business of all time. And it'd be hard to argue with that. So yeah, that's the topic of 1 wrestler or 3 or 4 that I would bring back. And yeah, that's about it. Like I said, I need you guys to send me questions and topics. I can definitely come up with them on my own. Don't worry about that. But I really want to cater to you guys. I want to go over some stuff that you guys want to hear, so that it's more interesting. I mean, some of this stuff I know not everybody knows about or knows about at all. So seriously, if there is anything wrestling that you want to know or you want me to talk about, just DM me. DM me on Instagram and Twitter at Monarchathias, MONNORCATHIAS. That is MONNORCATHIAS. And you have been listening to Wrestling with Connor. Thank you.